Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Help the Helpers. And this morning we are so happy to have Charles back with us. And Gisela, who was going to co-present, is not able to do that this morning or next week. So we will have Charles represent Gisela. You can present, Charles, with your inner Gisela.
Yeah, she and I have had a lot of conversations about the topic, so I probably will somewhere in there. Gisela will be here.
Great, great. So most of you know Charles, and he's been such a wonderful support and inspiration through the years, helping us with the integration of therapy and the philosophy of the implicit and the social political edge there that we're more and more, some of us are more and more interested in and unfolding. So I'll turn it over to Charles.
Thanks, Lynn. Thanks for that. Yes, it's been kind of a joint journey in unfolding, exploring this dimension, which was one that actually Gene was quite interested in how focusing can be more than just a self-development or a therapeutic tool, but how it can actually have implications for our whole society, how we live together. And I thought I would just begin with a little bit of a background of how I got here. And I think the tale mostly begins back when there were 1964, when now that there's a lot of protests on the campuses. When I came to Berkeley in 64, I was not really a radical. And I was actually kind of yelling at the demonstrators saying, why don't you go through proper channels? Why are you using all these other methods? And one of the people came up to me and said, well, why aren't you joining us? And it was kind of but she said it in such a friendly way. You know, it was like not hostile. It was just sort of like, well, why don't you join us? And I thought, oh, that actually moved me than arguing would ever have done. It was just a friendly question. And I've always took that with me as part of how we might try to think about how we go about trying to help other people shift. But from there, the main influence for me for many years was Erich Fromm, because I didn't know about Gene, and Gene hadn't really done his books yet. And from Fromm, I became aware of Freud and Marx and socialism, became a member of the Socialist Party. But I began to really go more deeply into both Freud, and I became a psychoanalyst, and I became a member of the Socialist Party. So that kind of, and in all of that, I began to deepen my awareness of Marx's critique of capitalism, which I began to sense was mainly a critique of how people become alienated. They become alienated from themselves, from each other, from a human community, and from the very activity that they engage in, which becomes something that's owned by someone else, their employer. So even our own activity isn't really ours. And the result of our work becomes a commodity and is sold to make a profit. So that we're disconnect from the way that our work is actually contributing to society, to community. It becomes just a thing we sell. And so I encountered focusing first when the book was given to me without much explanation by the former director of psychology at Souvenir, where I got a job and then became the director there of psychology myself. But so the book, I think, as Jim was saying, there's only so much you could get from a book. I did get a sense there was something there, that there was some way that we could access our bodies, and that something could come from there. But that it wasn't until I think Lynn came to Gouverneur after 9/11, and Jenny Ross. Am I getting the name? I'm wondering about the name.
Ross.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, she passed away recently, not too long ago.
Ross?
Yeah. Do people know her? Did they know that she was no longer alive?
No, I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah. That's about 2 years ago, I think now. But we got a grant at Gouverneur to work with trauma, because a lot of the community had been traumatized by the attack on the World Trade Center. And Lynn came and gave us a couple of classes on focusing and working with trauma. And you made me aware of Anne Weiser Cornell. Up until then, I only knew Gene's book. And Anne had a way of making focusing accessible through her use of language. So for a number of years, I was learning focusing from her, but I learned all these other things that were mentioned, became aware of all the other types of focusing as well. But what spoke to me was that it seemed to me that focusing offered a concrete way of, as I put it once to Gene, of de-alienating ourselves by connecting with our bodies. That Marx had a brilliant analysis of how capitalism had alienated people and turned people into commodities, and people were used to make profit, and that had a vision of a society where people would develop freely in a caring community. But we never seemed to get there. The Russian Revolution went terrible. Stalin ended up in control. The anarchist movement in Spain was crushed. The Paris Commune. It seemed everywhere where there was a revolution started out with the intention of creating a human society, and somehow got sidetracked. It felt to me that if we could constantly come back to our bodies, we'd be less likely to get sidetracked. We would be, and as Gene did a course with Anne on philosophy, focusing, and changing society. And he used the word not alienation, but isolated, that we were isolated. Isolated from our inner world, isolated from each other, and isolated from a world that would value human awareness and attention and interaction rather than be focused primarily on money and position and so forth. So I thought, wow, this is great, because we can always come back, we can always come in, and we can always check, is this right? And actually, Mary Hendricks, Gene's wife, also said she was also part of the free speech movement in Berkeley, but we didn't know each other at the time. And she said, well, whenever I'm in a group, I agree with the group to some extent, but then there was always something in me that doesn't quite agree with the group. That's my own, what's mine. And I think that that's really, in a way, what Marx was pointing to when he said that the free development of each person was the condition for everyone's development. That we had to have each person's contribution to make the whole development of everybody, needed to include everybody. And so So I thought, okay, this might be a way that we could actually go about helping to create a human society and not get lost in one more power structure that created a new class of people exploiting another class over and over again. We have new class divisions and new forms of class exploitation. How do we get to a place where we actually able to create a power, cooperative power with each other rather than power over? And I also learned from somebody in a meeting, focusing meeting, mentioned nonviolent communication. And I got curious about that. And so the two things together, focusing, which would help de-alienate, help us connect, help us to listen, and nonviolent communication, which helped us to connect on the level of our needs and empathizing and being honest about our needs, would create, I saw on NBC almost another parallel with Marx, because he said Marx envisioned the future society as one in which we would each give according to our ability, joyfully give according to our ability, and receive according to our needs. And I thought that's NBC, how we give joyfully and how we empathize with our own needs and the needs of others and create connections that are based on power with collaboration. Gene didn't like using the same word, power, for power with and power over. He said, they're so different. Don't use the same word. But we can use domination and cooperation. It doesn't matter. But the essential point is, in the way that we're creating what's new, has to be consistent with what we're trying to create. So we can't be using dominating, alienating ways of communicating or connecting if we're trying to create a society where we're connecting with each other authentically and from our hearts. But there was a whole question, and this Gene brings up too, is that enough? I mean, what do we need to do to really make a society where it's essentially based on promoting each person's free development? So I think I might want to just pause there and see if there's anybody would like to reflect what I said or give any thoughts. I'll make a little space here for comments.
Yes, I'd like to make a reflection.
Yes, please. Thank you.
The concept of the kibbutz in Israel was supposed to be this experiment, this vision that Marx had in mind, and it failed. So,
can you say more? Were you part of it? Were you part of a kibbutz?
No.
No.
But I'm familiar
what do you know about it?
I know a whole bunch of things, including I was going to join one. And at the end, I didn't. It's like the person you quoted, there was always something about the group that didn't fully resonate with me. And what now I'm reflecting on what could be happening is this new idea of trauma-based way of looking at development, or the theory of attachment or the lack of it, that it's very hard to be in a group when people are projecting their insecurities, their fears, their lack of security if it's not addressed. So what happens at the end, there will be certain people whose projections are going to be stronger and they're going to dominate and alienate those that or have those people that don't have enough ego strength to join them. And that's how you start movement and new movement and another movement that morphs out of the original one. And like in Animal Farm, the new movement will then create its own insanity and come down, like what happened with communism. There was no way it could survive. I happen to have I was born and lived under communist rule in Budapest, Hungary, and I can attest to the fact that the only way they thought they could possibly succeed is through power and domination. And that's pretty much with all new movements, because they kind of have to make their case. And the way they make their case is through having people align to the party line. And if not, then you get ostracized, killed, jailed, whatever. So it's very complex, the human psyche. That's what I'm.
Yeah, you're pointing to exactly the problem, right? How do we go about creating this free society that we supposedly believe in, right? By using methods that are oppressive and dominating. And you were able to sense that something wasn't quite right, that you couldn't quite join in, because somehow you were aware that you weren't 100% convinced or engaged or whatever. Is that right?
Yes, there was this, having come from communism, I didn't need another one, excuse the expression, Heil Hitler experience.
Right.
And the difficulty is that unfortunately, we don't have the kind of, how would I say, nurturing that gives us the kind of ego strength that allows us to speak up from a very self-compassionate for us and for the others to be the leaders. The leaders usually are not self-compassionate and compassion for others. They're usually wounded. They are wounded leaders. And how can we have them then run our lives?
Yeah, you got it a little more there about how we basically have leaders who are themselves not at peace with themselves, truly, right? And therefore can't really create a space in which people can speak and be themselves. And
yeah,
we had a phrase in NBC group, we called it not a leaderless group, but a leaderful group, which meant that everybody participated in leading and there was no leader.
Yeah.
I love that.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I love that phrase, the leaderful group. That's what we're trying to do in our community empowerment project. Our leadership group is a leaderful group. And we're trying to cultivate the leadership of voice in the group. And
a voice of the voice, of one's voice.
Like
each finding their voice.
Each person finding their voice, and each person able to speak more directly from their own experience, and each person being able to pick up on implicit dynamics going on, and each person being able to support when when people are triggered and just pouring out. It's not that the leader, that the facilitator is just making order, but that the group is saying, oh, well, I hear this and this is going on, and can we take a breath and can we pause here? And it's a very exciting experiment to have a leaderful group. I love that phrase.
And it kind of fits with Gene's sort of distinguishing between pouring out, fitting in, and relating.
Yes.
And that's where we need to keep our attention on the quality of our relating.
And what we've discovered in this project is that we don't want to have people be on their best behavior and not pour out.
Mhm.
We want people to be
Mhm. Mhm.
when there's something to pour out, they can pour out, and the rest of the group can
Mhm.
receive it. So there's a lot of learning in that the meaning of this was actually Erickson's line. A meaning of communication is in the response it elicits. And so if
Which Erickson do we mean? Eric Erickson or Milton Erickson?
Erik Erikson.
Okay.
So that if there are people who can deeply listen rather than retaliating or collapsing, then there's room for pouring out and leadership that is wounded, because we all are.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Well, that's very interesting what you're adding here, that there needs to be a space for people to pour out when they need to, and that there's a way of listening that actually can help the other person find their, I guess, their actual meaning or whatever.
Yes.
Right? Yeah. Oh, that's very nice. Yeah, thank you.
Although I would like to push back on that a little bit, that in order to be able to do that, when we get triggered, we should be doing a U-turn, saying what in me got triggered. And in order to do that, we might need to reflect on some painful experiences that got us to the point of trigger. And that's where I find that in my work, a lot of people have a hard time tolerating the pain that does come with this kind of reflection, and hold the tension instead of taking medication, instead of blaming the other, but to truly reflect what in me got triggered and where does that trigger come from. And let me take responsibility for it. So in a culture like ours, that's, shame and blame, where we want the easy way out, it's a tall order.
And how do we encourage people to pause, right? In their trigger. Partly how, but I want to sort of connect the two of you to say that maybe the way we listen helps the person to pause.
Yes.
Okay, let me jump in.
Oh, please.
The leaderful community.
Yes.
It feels like a body with all the cells.
Yeah.
Like the whole body.
nice
and cells
metaphor.
Are opening
Yeah.
their ears, listening to the whole body.
Yeah.
And I would like to reflect, Charles, your reflection.
Yeah.
On what I hear. I appreciate your genuine sharings on how you comes this far. And what I hear you are saying is more on each of us, a call to each of us, so that we can actually bring out or recognize the given unique gift, I would say.
Yes.
So that we bring shine to the world. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. Very beautifully said. I think that's reminding me of that song, "This Little Light of Mine, I'm going to let it shine."
Yes.
Or even Jesus saying, "Don't put your light under a bushel," but let you bring forth who you are. We all need it. Yeah. Thank you. Yes. Very right. I like that metaphor of a body with all its cells.
Yes.
A body lives because it has all its cells. Once the cells, particularly there's a whole process of replenishment, right? But the body
I think they're waiting for the moment.
They're waiting for their moment.
They are actually waiting for the time to listen, to open up and listen.
Oh, that's so lovely.
To be
I enjoy that.
Uh-huh.
And that fits with the leaderful type of idea, right? Yeah.
I'm noticing how it isn't just the words, but that your expression, your face invites, oh, come out and shine.
Yes. Yeah.
Mm,
Thank you. Yeah, I'm
thank
actually
you.
would like to come out and make the invitation
Yes.
Very nice. Thank you.
together. Yeah. Thank you.
We might bring in Greg Madison's metaphor of the inner democracy and the embodied democracy, needing all of the voices and make
slow democracy, right? Slow democracy, where we take our time.
That's and no majority rules. That we find a place for every voice, even the voice that is unpopular in the group, or we find what that voice is contributing.
Yeah, it reminds me. I served on a jury, and in a jury, you don't go by majority. And you have to. Everybody has to agree on whether the person's guilty or not. And if there's somebody who's having a hard time coming to that conclusion, everyone in the group listens to that person, and they try to see why they don't think that they want to come to a verdict. And it's a very different process from just voting. Yeah. It's very respectful of each person on the jury. Everyone is an individual that matters. Yeah.
And one more thing is to find the right place, right persons who are already there, like our group. Like Lynn is always right.
Yes.
To
I want to
try
say
that.
Go on. Sorry.
Yes. I'm finished.
Okay. I want to say something. I was listening to Gene's class with Anne, and he talked about a concept of what he called the towns, which he feels are sort of focusing is one town. And I think this little group we have here is a kind of town where we value listening, and nobody's here because they're getting paid. We're just here because we want to be. And we feel nurtured by being here. So we have a little instance here in our group, this group here, of a town, which is kind of an example of how we would actually like things to be in our world and in the world as much as possible. So it's really wonderful to have an instance.
Right. A town who speak the same languages.
And we speak many languages and we speak the same language, right?
You're right, right.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
I like to think of a border town, like in Europe, where there are many countries that border on that town, and in that town, there are many languages, and dinner could be served at 6 and at 8 and at 10. All the different kinds of foods are served, and the different kinds of money before now all the same money, but and that was a delight to be in those towns.
That's so wonderful. One thing I love about New York is how many different types of ethnic groups we have here, mostly living together peacefully. Yeah. I learned something from Noam Chomsky. He said that, which makes perfect sense when you think about it, that it didn't used to be that people spoke French and they spoke Italian. But the closer you got to Italy, the more language became Italian. And the closer you got to France, the more the language became French. But there was a progression. There was not there's a border here and they speak Italian here and they speak French here, which actually is a crazy thing. Oh, there's a border. Here we speak Italian. Oh, here we speak French. What? How did that happen? Well, nation states were created and they adopted languages, and that's how it happened. But originally, that's not how it was.
So we tend to speak other people's language.
That's interesting. Yes and no, right? Yeah. Yeah. But maybe we're a little rigid in how we say we have this language and that language. Maybe there's more of a flow possible, or at least metaphorically, that we're not just talking our own language. Yeah.
Or we are speaking other people's language so that the inner language is being understood. There's something there within that we want to be heard. So we are trying to make those heard.
Yeah.
That's something within.
Yeah.
Which is common in the same within us.
Yeah. Because the fact that we can translate languages mean in some ways we speak the same language, just we have different versions of that language.
Yeah.
And then as you're pointing to the inner language, which I'm reminded of Gene saying he went to Japan and he made a faux pas. He held up a check that they had donated and said, "Look, we got this money." And that was considered very bad taste in Japan. But then he sat down with a father and did some focusing listening. And here he was like, this is another human being just like me, with his father, with his son. And all these cultural differences kind of faded away behind the fact that
Exactly.
we have that humanity that we share.
Something that is deep down.
Yeah, something deep down that unites us in some profound way. So if we can do that, maybe that's an interesting into this issue of how do we build a new society? Well, there's partly this deep listening, right? Because we're so polarized in our country. We hardly can listen to each other. We're yelling at each other.
I was just thinking, Charles, that you are talking about Marx and social, maybe a different language from the language of other people, helpers group, and maybe Marx's hero for you is a villain for other people.
Right, I'm aware of that. I'm aware that some people would have a very different sense of.
That's an instance of us speaking different languages, and we may want to people. How is it when we're giving when reflections are in a language that isn't your own language? People assume that their heroes are the heroes of all the people in town. And that's not true, because we all speak different languages. And how are we when someone is bringing in a language that that is foreign to us?
Well, that was one reason, Lynn, why I wanted to focus on the concepts and not so much the personal. Of course, I mentioned Marx, but I was trying to mention what it was about Marx that spoke to me.
Oh, yes, but I'm not sure
Yeah.
we want to sidestep that issue, because to create this this way of relating, we need to come up against the difference in languages, because that's what we don't do, is to make
Sure. I mean, Marianne was saying earlier, am I pronouncing it correctly, Marianne?
Marianne.
She was describing how oppressive the communism, which they claim to follow Marx. I would say they're not, but they think they are. Yeah.
So in terms of
yeah, go on, please.
Just looping back in terms of Lynn's proposition about where our conversation can be. Jung has this notion of the collective unconscious, and that's our collective commonality. In it is our desire to seek the numinous. It's our desire or ability to identify what a hero is energetically without having to have language. Where we go awry is with our personal unconscious. The collective unconscious got it. It's our personal unconscious that got waylaid by the world being very big while we were very small, and we needed to make up a story how to manage the unmanageable world. And it kind of clouded over our initial sunlight. So we all have that sunlight. It's just that the personal journey clouds over that sun, and all we have to do, is to understand those clouds and have them, kind of be not pushed aside, but somehow managed, because we cannot get rid of things. Or from my experiences, we can understand it compassionately where it is that we are not whole, and just say, oh, okay, so here I got triggered again. It has nothing to do with the other person. It has to do with something that happened to me whenever it happened, but now I have enough resources to deal with it. But to do that journey, we need a lot of conscious people who are willing to patiently and compassionately keep looking at our sun inside. And as therapists, we're also triggered. I would say, just, for myself, it's very hard for me to stay present at times with certain people.
Yeah.
I'm thinking that we're having a conversation here with a few of us, and we want to be an instance of society, and I'm wondering if we can open this up to comments from everybody.
Yeah. And also, I would very happy to hear from anybody who felt triggered by my referencing Marx, because I know even 100 years later, 150 years later, he's still such a controversial figure.
You can just speak, Liz.
Yes, go ahead, Liz.
Charles, good morning.
Hi, good morning.
I was going to say something, but then you said something just now. I want to say something about that first, which is funny to me that you pointed out. If anyone, sorry, trying to wake up. If anybody is triggered by your mention of Marx, and my thought was, no, I'm triggered when people mention God.
Yeah,
Marx,
sure.
cool, man.
I have some very devout atheists.
But I really wanted to ask someone something. It's the hugest topic about, you were saying about the body.
Mhm.
And I have trouble with that too, that I never can quite get the body part. And I fear that it's something like the body knows or something, but I know I'm not being quite coherent. But for me, it's never the body, even when it is the body. For me, when it's the body, it's some kind of conception of the body, or it's a feeling about the body, but the feeling is there, but so is the about,
Mhm. Mhm.
and something about privileging the body and focusing
Mhm.
that I have trouble with, because there's the body, but I don't privilege it, or think it's the source of any special wisdom, especially because it's not really the body. It's some kind of a formulation about the body,
Mhm.
even if that formulation is body based. And I know this doesn't make any sense. I wondered if you had
No, it
any
makes
idea what I'm
sense.
talking about.
No, it makes sense. I was listening to Gene again. He sees it as a conversation with what's implicit, and also that what's implicit is always vague or not. It's sort of like we're engaged in kind of listening to something. And of course, when he talks about the body, he's talking about a felt sense, really, right? Not so much the literal body.
But people
And
make it into the literal body,
I
even
think
in the
they do, and I think
attunements.
you're pointing to something valuable here. Yeah, thank you.
Even in the attunements, in your
Yeah.
legs, they kind of do. And I always
Mm-hmm.
have trouble with
Mm-hmm.
that. And then you can get into a kind of thing, as you can with meditation, where you feel like, oh God, I'm still thinking and I'm supposed to be doing some other thing that's not thinking, but I don't know how to do it. And it has something to do with the body.
Mm-hmm. Of course, Gene is never denying the thinking part. And it's more of a experience. I think it's really talking about experiencing. Forget the body. Let's talk about just what we sense, what we feel, what we experience, and staying with that long enough so we can let it form a little bit. That's how I really like what you're saying, because we do kind of almost make a fetish out of the body, right?
We reify it. We make it.
We reify it,
Exactly.
and that's not the intention of. At
I-
least I don't think it's Gene's intention, but yeah.
I like when Gene says that he'll say to his client who's going on and on and on about something, is that here right now? Pointing to his chest.
Mm.
The clients will say, yes, it's so heavy. And the other half of the clients will look at him like, what are you talking about? And then he just goes on. He didn't say it. Say, oh, forget that. So some people are geared toward the experience being signaled in a physical way, and other people, it's more energetic, or it's more relational. And so that language, I totally agree, Liz, has to be used, has to be widened, because when we use the word body, it can be very misleading.
What do you make of the fact that a lot of people in focusing are into stuff like Feldenkrais and, real body stuff, that there isn't some kind of a connection that people make about all of that?
What I make of it is that there is a physicality to our feelings and our thoughts, and that when we become sensitive to that physicality, the palpableness, that it can be a powerful avenue.
Well, Lynn, more so that a brain without a body cannot think.
What does that mean, Michael?
That means that there's no connection with the body and the mind. It's one integral potential. There's no distinction. That is only conceptual ideas which are not real. They don't exist. There are ways of talking about something, and as soon as we start talking about these things, we're not talking about reality. It's abstract. It's something else. And this is what is complex to be able to talk about our experience, because as soon as we start talking about experience, we make it a thing. It's a unit. It's not what it is in real life. We can't abstract it and talk about the real thing.
And yet we want to talk about experience,
Yes.
because we're doing
Yes.
it right now, and that's the main way that we communicate with each other.
Exactly. And at the same time that you're answering this, you're experiencing sensations and emotions, but you're not hearing about it. You're not sharing the experience, the real thing. We have to go in therapy to do that. Why? That's real life. We don't need therapy for that. We just need to learn that this is what life is. You know, not be, I don't know how to say it, because it's such an obvious, you know, Moshe Feldenkrais wrote a book, The Elusive Obvious. And it's a powerful title because it's always already the case, but we're talking about something else in order to talk about what it is. We're our own way of talking, and this is what I think Gendlin was really trying to say, how political our ways of trying to put words on our experience become, because we're trying to explain something from a place that we cannot understand it, because it doesn't come from, like Charles said, from this body that we think really has something to do with the felt sense of the experience of being alive. So it's a conundrum. It's very complex, and this is what is absolutely, like Lynn said a bit at the beginning, this is why this community is absolutely effervescence in our experience. It's titillating. It's alive. We're trying to touch something by being that rather than explaining it. It's an incredible process, and this is why I'm here today. I'm very happy for you to be here, Charles, also, because it's we can't, you know, it's not so obvious to, without communing a direct experience of what it is. When we start, and there was a nice ingredient that you said before, slowing down. When Feldenkrais would say, you have to slow down so slowly that it becomes boring. And from that boring, something new happens. It's like slowing down. When we look at the world today, everybody's afraid of slowing down. Everybody's going so fast, and they're going so fast nowhere, you know? It's true.
I would like to say something about that.
Yes, Liz.
Slowness that occurs to me, that I've kept in me for many, many years, which is that the conductor Daniel Barenboim, if you know who that is, famously said that when people tell him that the tempo at which he's conducting a piece is too slow and draggy, which is a frequent criticism of him, his response is he slows it down more.
Yeah.
And it's almost like a fractal, you know, he makes it even.
Yes. That's beautiful.
Right?
It reminds me of when I was working with some Latina women. They say, "Oh, I hate washing dishes." And I said, "Well, just do it more slowly."
Beautiful.
And often if they take the time to just sense each dish and the water, it's not such a terrible thing, washing a dish. Okay, why don't we do our little, I was going to invite people to do a little experiential thing and then go into the groups, the breakouts.
Charles, could I say
Yes,
something very quickly?
yes. Oh, I see also that Megs has something to say too, so I don't want to cut her off. Go ahead, Dorothy.
Just the historical context for me about the body, or one way that I could understand it, because I've always been one of those ones that, like, oh no, don't tell me to go into the body. No, don't command me to go into the body. There was
Right,
something about that.
right.
But I do understand the historical context of trauma when sensation was actually cut off, and just like another way to come into this, that when one deadens themselves in sensation. Just another little piece around this.
One of the ways that we respond to trauma is dissociation, right?
Right.
And that includes dissociating from the body.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, that's why telling somebody to will go into your body and good things will happen can really be an invitation to re-traumatize yourself.
Right, exactly. Yeah, yeah. Very well said. Yeah. Yeah. I want to check Megs, because it said it rhymes with eggs.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that from the world of chemistry, I watch everybody has seen some demonstration of what do you call it? The spectroscope. You take a glob of something and you throw it in flame, and the spectroscope produces a bar graph showing the 27 components in that substance. And here in the focusing world, in focusing sessions, I suppose in therapy, so often we're looking for the biggest bar on that bar graph. If we could put a probe in our brain viscera, we would see everything has come so many. If you're paying attention, if you're really tuned into something, you often have 5 or 10 different reactions intellectually and viscerally to the same thing. Like Charles, when you said Marx, there you are, a baby of 18 or 19. And you mentioned Berkeley and Marx, and I had about 8 different reactions to you saying when you were 18, 19, that you moved into the world of Marxism. And but if we were talking about it, none of us can name those 8 or 9. There's not. But what Michael said about slowing down, it allows one to perhaps become more aware of that. But isn't it Gene that's always saying there's always more than you can say? Maybe there's always 40 times, put a number. I like to put numbers on things that helps clarify. They're not always true, but they are, for me, helpful. Not just more than you can say, but 40 times more than you can say.
40 times more than you can say.
Yeah, huge,
50,
huge.
Yeah.
Yes.
Let's go into if it's okay, let's go because actually the slowing down is a good introduction, I think, to the experiential exercise. And this is one that I learned from Marshall Rosenberg, which is, are people okay with any objections to going into the exercise? Okay. Let's, again, slow down, take a breath, be aware of how we are, our bodies and our whole selves. And ask this question. In my heart of hearts, how do I want to relate to other people in my world? We've been programmed all kinds of ways by society. How we should think, how we should feel. But if we could really be true to ourselves How do we want to relate to others? And if we could connect to that place in ourselves, what would it mean if we could somehow tap into that energy as we move in our lives? It's not going to be 100%. We're going to have all times where we aren't connected to that spot. Let's say we know that that's there, that there's that spot in us, which is how we really truly want to be. And maybe something comes up that's kind of wants to argue or say, no, but that's okay. Just let that be there. Let it fill you, let it fill you, let it fill you with whatever wants to be there. And what I'm going to suggest now is as we break out into our groups, don't force anything. Don't make yourself feel anything or try to make yourself feel. Just let whatever came be there in whatever form it is. And go into your groups and talk and share in whatever way comes to you to be together. And we'll come back and we'll have a little chance to talk.
What time should we come back, Charles?
We're having groups of 3.
Yeah.
I think people should have at least 5 minutes each. Yeah.
We'll come back in 15.
Yeah. If people want a little more. What's that? I'm sorry.
Do you want to be in a group, Charles?
Oh, sure. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Okay, see you all in 15 minutes.
Okay.
Hey, good morning. In 15 minutes.
Hi, sorry guys, I have a few things going on at the same time. I'm going to try to put on my camera.
Rachel, I didn't put you in a room because
Oh,
I
you didn't? Oh,
usually don't want to go, so you're just here with
thank
us.
you.
Us
I'm just
breakout when
here.
the dog beats.
Okay, great. I'm in the what's it called? Purgatory room.
Yes, you could just hang until 9:35.
You know what? I'm going to go because I have another meeting at 9:30. That's why I usually don't go into the rooms. But
Oh,
thank you.
you're welcome.
Thank you so much. Okay, bye.
Bye.
Hi, Katerina. Gray has such a nice picture in her square. Hi, Charles.
Yeah.
Hello. Welcome back. Hello, everybody.
Hello.
Hi.
Okay, I have to say okay. Uh-huh. We have to say okay to being recorded.
Oh.
Welcome. So how was your breakout rooms?
Very interesting.
Yes, in what way?
Uh-huh.
We have a chance to say, to talk about, to reflect on life and the stages of life.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, to have one of those rare opportunities to have a real heartfelt conversation about things that matter. Yeah.
I found that question about how we want to relate to people very very evocative, because of course I think I'm always thinking about that, but then do I really think about that? And I relate?
Well, there's how you intend to relate to people, and then there's the way you actually relate to people.
Yes. Absolutely.
Right.
So true.
But then there's something else that I found, like a deep desire that isn't either how I intend or how I actually do, but something else.
Lynn, that kind of reminds me of the different levels of what I took away from my NVC training of wanting something specific and going under and feeling the need, and that there's something so powerful about how I want to be with other people, my intention, that's feels very strong. I also noticed as soon as I got a little bit in touch with that, whoosh, like all this resistance and fear, you know.
Yes, I know what you mean. Yes. It's like that edge of awareness, and you get a little glimpse of it.
Yeah, I want to say the group made me participating here this morning. I realized I have two big reactions. If we're in a group, I'm in a lot of political groups, financial groups that have to make decisions. And when I walk in those groups, and I didn't realize this till the last actually 10 minutes of our group discussion, I am very wary. I am like a huge truckload of question marks. Who are you? Why are you here? And it's not hateful, but it's super wary. Where if I'm sitting and now new scene, if I'm sitting next to any of you at a lunch counter, we're at the same bar, have it, blah, blah, blah. We're next to one another in the waiting line. I'm curious about you. I'm interested, but I feel very genial and well disposed, one-on-one with human beings. But in a meeting that has to shape the world in some way, very on guard, wary, and slow to recede from that state. I'm checking you out, baby, because you're dangerous.
Very interesting.
And by the way, I'm not hyperbole there. Women's groups, political groups. I'm in a group right now that's making a $20,000 decision for hundreds of households. Who are you?
Rex, we lost your sound.
Yeah.
Yeah, Marianne, we can't hear you.
I wasn't talking.
Oh,
No wonder.
No wonder we couldn't hear you.
there's a safe person.
Yeah. Funny man.
It's almost time for our poem, but I have a feeling that
Oh,
there's
wow, it really is. I didn't realize. Oh, okay.
I have
I
a
just,
feeling that
I
there.
just want to say one thing.
Go ahead.
I'm so thankful that we are recording this because I found it so rich and I'm really wanting to hear what Charles said all over again. So thank you.
Oh, that's so nice.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Thank you. Thank you. Wonderful. Thank you very much. Shall I read the poem?
I feel that there's one more person that has something.
Who is that?
Can I say something?
Yes. Oh, hi. Hi,
Hi,
Natty.
Charles. Hi, everybody.
Hi.
So I was just wanting to share this, that because it came to me with all the conversation, something about the conversation went about somewhere about languages and culture and how and then the connection and how we are being affected all the time, and how when I want to connect and when I'm trying to connect, I can be aware of things that affect me in different ways and that make me be a certain way or behave in a certain way that's different from others. And I was thinking about how languages, and this is something that Rob Parker says, that when we have different languages, we have different ways of seeing the world. And I totally agree with that. And I can say from myself that not in this group, because I feel very comfortable here, because I've known many of you for a long time and I've been here for a long time, but it does happen to me that when I'm, as a Latin American person living in Argentina, I might feel a little bit uncomfortable in groups that speak English and don't speak Spanish and that are from, I don't know, I would say North America or Europe, because there has been in my bringing up a certain kind of having to look up to cultures, to North American cultures or European cultures. And that is something that I have overcome, of course, but there's a layer that's somehow unconscious there. So there's a lot about languages, and that has to do with the weight that they have, that has to do with the culture and the people more than the language itself. So I just wanted to bring that up, because it's something that I'm aware of more and more.
I'm so glad you said that, Natty. It'd be wonderful if you would do a reflection sometime about language, cultural language, as well as the languages of countries of location.
I'd love to do that, Lynn.
Something curious happened to me listening to you, Natty, because I speak Spanish. My mother was Spanish. And suddenly I feel a whole connection to you because I wasn't aware, that you spoke of yours. And it's just something interesting how that opens up a whole space in my body and my heart because of the connection through language. And I try to learn new languages whenever possible. Yeah. Because I feel each language adds to my experience of people in the world, and there's each language opens up a world, right? Yeah, that's very nice. Thank you.
Thank you, Charles, for saying that. That felt very, very nice. And it does open so many different things.
Yeah. Okay.
I just want to say hello to Natty. A lot. Yeah. Okay, miss your voice.
Hola.
Yeah,
hola.
And besides language, I think we have also age. We have also gender. These are also factors that speak for themselves.
Yes.
At the same time, I had no idea that Natty spoke Spanish. Are you now in Argentina?
I live in Argentina. I was born here. Yes.
Okay. So we speak a different Spanish too. You say vos.
Yes, we do. That's also part of culture.
Right.
Have to have our poem and
yes. Okay. All right. Here we go. Whoever you are, come forth, or man or woman, come forth. You must not stay sleeping and dallying there in the house, though you built it or though it was been built for you. Out of the dark confinement, out from behind the screen. It's useless to protest. I know all and expose it. Behold, through you as bad as the rest, through the laughter, dancing, dining, supping of people, inside of dresses and ornaments, inside of those washed and trimmed faces. Behold, a secret, silent loathing and despair. No husband, no wife, no friend to trust to hear the confession. Another self, a duplicate of everyone. Skulking and hiding it goes, formless and wordless through the streets of the cities, polite and bland in the parlors, in the cars of railroads and steamboats, in the public assembly, home to the houses of men and women, at the table and the bedroom, everywhere. Smartly attired, countenance smiling, form upright, death under the breastbones, hell under the skull bones, under the broadcloth and gloves, under the ribbons and artificial flowers, keeping fair with the customs, speaking not a syllable of itself, speaking of anything else, but never of itself. Allons, the road is before us. It is safe. I have tried it. My own feet have tried it well. Be not detained. Let the paper remain on the desk, unwritten, and the book on the shelf, unopened. Let the tools remain in the workshop. Let the money remain unearned. Let the school stand, mind not the cry of the teacher. Let the preacher preach in his pulpit. Let the lawyer plead in the court, and the judge expound the law. Camarado, I give you my hand. I give you my love, more precious than money. I give you myself before preaching or law. Will you give me yourself? Will you come travel with me? Shall we stick by each other as long as we live?
Oh, that's beautiful. Thank you, Charles. And we look forward to seeing you next week, Charles.
Yes, we'll
Everybody
continue
next week. Yes.
our exploration and our discussion. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank
Oh
you.
gosh, thank you.
Bye-bye,
Bye-bye.
everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank
Thanks,
you.
Charles.
Bye-bye. Kristen, you can leave this channel on because I'm going to meet. Bye. Jim, I'm going to talk to Stuart for a few minutes, and then I'll get you on the channel.
Okay.
Okay. At 10. Okay. Bye.